Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey Juan.
How's it going?
Super great.
I'm glad that your mic's working nowadays.
I know,
Um,
right?
Let me see. Can you see are you guys seeing my screen right now?
Yes.
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 Oh, okay, because I can't move it for whatever reason. Oh, okay, there you go. I can move it now.
Yeah, I
Okay.
need you to move it so I can remember what I wrote.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Otherwise, I can bring it up on my phone, but
No, you're good. I gotta work with this. Hope I don't cancel you guys out or something by accident.
I can't see.
Okay. Can you see now?
yes.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So I did the first article. I did the right one this time. I like triple checked when I was doing it. Why cultural intelligence matters on global project teams. All right. So basically, the article wanted to answer the question, how does cultural intelligence moderate a model of indirect effects on global project team members' performance and satisfaction? I think that the whole article was written like with way too many complicated words and never ended up saying anything, but that's the my own opinion. Anyways, what they're looking at is what they call cultural intelligence, which is defined as a person's ability to adapt effectively to new cultural contexts. And they believe that this has an indirect effect on role clarity within the team, communication norms, and interpersonal trust. Um, then they also defined a term called CQ motivation, which is cultural motivation, I guess, or cultural intelligence motivation, like wanting to get to know about the other culture. So the attention and energy one invests in cross-cultural encounter. And the components of what makes up the cultural intelligence is knowledge of the other culture, motivation to interact with the other culture, and communication behavior that adapts to the other culture's communication norms. So what they did was they studied how cultural intelligence affects how members of a global project team interact, and um, they defined a global project team by a group that has members of different cultures and nationalities, are geographically dispersed, and rely on communication technologies to not in person talking. Um, Overall, the results they found were that team members' motivational, cultural intelligence was strengthens the interplay between clarifying roles and aligning communication norms, but neither cult. I wish I'd written it out, man. Neither cultural intelligence or knowledge or behavior significantly moderated team members' communication norms or role clarity. So then this is the interesting part was the quality of their research methods. So what they did was this was surprising. They decided to like recycle a survey that they already used to study something else. They never actually said well, they kind of said what it was, but it wasn't very clear. So they used the same survey data that they'd used to study global project teams before. And oh wait, they used it as a basis to investigate how, oh, and they used it this time to use how it would cultural intelligence would moderate team dynamics. The survey data that they originally took included 218 responses from 33 multinational company teams. I didn't think that was actually a lot of responses to base this on either, but their previous research focused on the effect of virtual communicate. Previous research done in this has focused more on what the virtual communication does rather than how the cross-cultural teams affect this. So they didn't have a lot of basis to work with in the beginning. They had two hypotheses. The first one was that global project team members, cultural intelligence. Whoa,
Nope, sorry.
went too far.
Apologize.
Will moderate the positive relationships between communication, norm alignment, and interpersonal trust, such that when cultural intelligence is higher, the relationships between communication and role alignment is stronger. I don't know why they wrote it so complicated, but anyways, the results showed that. Oh, you went too far again. The results to that showed that it did not support that. So it didn't seem that communication and role and alignment were actually affected by the cultural intelligence. But they believe that may have been due to the phrasing of the survey, since it was developed for another study, and the survey questions may not have taken into consideration the context of the relationship between the team and the cultures. And they said that most companies relied on email, which doesn't allow for the nuances of the verbal and real-time language that's more impacted by culture. You know, like cultural communication, when you're just typing out an email, you can like it's a lot easier than it is if you're actually speaking to somebody or using like a real-time kind of chat. And then that culture element studied may not be relevant to the work that the teams do. So each team developed a narrower range of topics to culturally understand one another, but they didn't actually have an understanding of the culture. They just talked about work. The second hypothesis was that cultural intelligence will moderate a positive relationship between communication, norm alignment, and interpersonal trust, such that when cultural intelligence is higher, the relationship between communication, norm alignment, and the interpersonal trust is stronger. And this one they found did not seem to be a relationship between communication norms and interpersonal satisfaction, and that cultural intelligence effects are more gradual in formation of a negotiated culture. That was kind of interesting, and characterized by emerging trust-based interpersonal relationship. The negotiated culture was similar to what I mentioned in the other part, where they kind of come up with a team culture rather than integrating the different cultures. They just come up with like how they operate as a team. So that I mean, the main thing I took out of this was the results of the study showed that the reusing survey data without taking it into consideration the goals of the new study probably caused the lack of proof for hypothesis, and overall it probably didn't really show much of anything at all. And then the recommendations is that future work needs to be done to examine teams and cultural intelligence effects with more specifically targeted survey questions. And then they had other research applications, like how cultural intelligence motivation iteratively develops typo.
Among.
Thank you. Among GPT or called team members, how communicating effectively and efficiently is affected by motivation, and the effect of cultural intelligence on team role clarity. They also suggested that as teams form, there's early cultural intelligence training with an emphasis on the motivation, cultural intelligence motivation, and that they shift away from culture-specific knowledge to individual knowledge, which is also a step to developing that shared culture thing, or the team culture, rather than integrating all the cultures into it. And then as the application, again, I just kind of reiterated what it said, but that as cross-cultural teams have become really common, though, it's more important to look at different cultures and how it could work. It would be good for teams to take the time to learn about the individuals at other locations as well as their culture. And I think that in a lot of cases, especially in project work, learning about a new culture will help with things like not just working together, but also working in the area. Like if they're working in another country to build something, it helps with having people that understand you on the other team, and understanding their culture can help you get through like the bureaucracy and the cultural norms that will affect your project ultimately. Like when we talked about that Disney Paris or whatever they called it. Like would it help to know the French culture a little better?
Right. So let me ask you a question. Do you actually agree with the article or not?
I don't think the article really found out anything because I think ultimately the research was useless because they didn't use that. I mean, they thought they could use the survey data, but it didn't end up showing them anything. And it was also a very small data set to try to compile this information from. So, um, I think that knowing it depends on the situation, but like you were saying before we started, it's probably enough to be able to work together as a team and understand the individuals on the team without having to learn the culture. But I do think that it's important to understand the culture for um, if you're working on projects that are going to happen in another place, in another culture.
Right, where you have to have cultural sensitivity that applies
Yeah,
to the project itself, right?
right,
Versus
exactly.
the people. Because not to say anything, but like I don't think I've studied any of your guys' culture that, and we're still working in a great team, right? And one of the things that this article was talking about was it came back to what I would think of as a project charter where we establish the rules and norms of how we're gonna conduct each other, right? And but then there's also unwritten rules such as mutual respect, right? You're not gonna be saying any like stuff that's inappropriate, you know what I mean? And then creating a culture that is inclusive, I think trumps the cultural aspect of it, right? Because like even if it's a little on your side, unless you're like very fanatical in your religion based or in your culture, then it would play an effect. But other than that, it'd be like, hey, we're just having conversations that are sometimes hard to say because if you embed yourself so much in a culture, then you might actually get offended by the conversations that need to happen, right? Because a lot of the conversations rely on what we consider risk.
I mean, I
The
would think,
oh, sorry.
hi, I would think that there's still somewhat of a role just socially because of what I read about in the second article, how it's uh like it can be slightly affected based because there's always going to be, not always, but in some environments, someone who has a bias towards certain people or something like that. Like, I don't know, Kristen, if you remember our professor, Barnes, she told us that story about the project where like it was basically a mess because no one was listening to the the project manager because of like a cultural difference because of like contextual factors, like where
Yeah.
he came from and what he studied and how long he's been in the business. So I think it has some significance still.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I was
do
gonna. Oh,
as well. And I know one like connected it to like our team, and I think that do we do work well, and I think we also have various different backgrounds and cultures. But I think also the article kind of highlights, global teams. So these are teams that are kind of working in different countries and different areas where I feel like those um cultural intelligent factors do play like a bigger role. In those types of environments. So I can definitely see what the article is saying about like um, you know using cultural intelligence to really like learn who your team is, to really get to know them, because I think it does in influence like how you come to the table,
uh-oh.
and what you uh-oh, did you lose me? Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. I think
Oh,
she
I
froze.
think she froze. Okay. And then like how team members come to the table. Because I have a lady on my team, and she's from Russia, and she's always bringing like things like from like her perspective, like living in Russia for most of her life and just being here for a couple of years. And it just brings like a totally different perspective. And I can tell like the team really values that, and because she now feels that, I feel like she like now voices her opinion like even more, and it just only makes the team better. So I can definitely see how it plays a factor when you have like those global teams in play.
And for an application, I was thinking if a team or manager wanted to prioritize cultural intelligence, that they could treat it as like a risk factor to something going wrong within the project.
Can you elaborate like a little bit more on that?
Yeah, like if they see, say there's maybe conflict starts to happen because of things we've talked about, like influence bias or whatever, and they want to make an opportunity out of it, they need to treat it as a risk factor so that they can improve their processes and improve their collaboration overall.
Well, if like you're doing like a project with like my department teams up with Hiroshima University a lot. And sometimes we have them come visit. I don't usually deal with the like virtual communication with them, but like when they come visit, we have to like do special things because they're expecting like to meet with the highest level person first at the start of their visit, like so like I have to plan the meeting with the dean before I can plan the other meetings. And then like they will always bring gifts for everybody. Like they'll bring like a box of candy for the office and like individual gifts for the people that they talk to. And like we have to have certain things on hand for them because they expect to have like refreshments and stuff. So I think that that would be something, it is a risk because say we didn't know those things or we didn't understand the culture and we didn't do those things and offended them and then they'd be like, we don't want to work with them anymore, like, so
Yeah, I could totally see that, like imagine bringing pork ribs to
yeah.
like the article and then everybody's Jewish there. You're gonna really offend somebody.
Or we
Okay.
worked with a bunch of people from Afghanistan a couple of years ago, and it was a similar situation. Like when we had lunches and stuff, we had to make sure we had halal stuff, and you know. So I guess there actually is a lot you need to know.
I mean, now that we're talking about it, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what this discussion's about, to synthesize and kind of change a little bit of the thing. I actually liked the second article that Courtney did. Yeah, actually, it was really interesting.
Yeah, it talked about di introducing diversity into virtual teams, specifically personal and contextual diversity. So they're linked to task outcomes and psychological outcomes. And overall, the article addresses the question of the relationship between the different types of diversities and those outcomes. So it identified positive effects of diversity can be explained by information processing theory and resource-based view, which introduces this idea that shared learning is positively affected by diversity because diverse contexts yield diverse knowledge, info, and resources. And RBV suggests that the more heterogeneous the resource, the more difficult it is to copy, which makes it more valuable to the team's overall success. And it also talks about similarity attraction theory and social identity theory having an impact on the relationship between personal diversity and team effectiveness. It talks about this idea that people are attracted and drawn to others based on similar characteristics and beliefs because personal diversity can reduce attraction, comfort, and communication within teams. And the study itself was a relatively large scale. It included over 5,000 individuals who were all business students, over 804 project teams, and 132 universities. And the task outcomes were measured by supervisors and professors, and the psychological outcomes were self-reported by the people who took part in the study. And it utilized a wide variety of both personal and contextual factors, but found a negative relationship with team effectiveness in personal diversity and a positive effect in contextual diversity. But with contextual, the relationship was pretty weak, and for personal, it had a larger negative effect on psychological outcomes. And some of the recommendations they made is to compose a team of individuals who have similar personal characteristics but are different in terms of contextual factors like their diverse upbringings or education. Considering the project scope before deciding whether to prioritize task or psychological outcomes. Because, as we said before, task outcomes can be produced by prioritizing contextual diversity and psychological outcomes from personal diversity. And the introduction of diversity alone isn't enough because it's only a fraction of what actually impacts overall team effectiveness.
Yeah, when I was reading this one, I actually thought about how the article itself, because it was such a big uh wide pool versus Kristen's um what is it, the information that they gathered, the data, it leaves it open for more further study, right?
Yeah.
I actually agree to a certain point that the effectiveness, which is what related me to what I was talking about earlier, that it didn't that it's only part of a whole, right? It's like cultural diversity was only part of a whole, and then it also can create a negative a aspect of it, right? Because if somebody is uh has a very strong cultural aspect, now you have to like respect it, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, well, what should I say and what shouldn't I say? You know, what makes it
Mhm.
the norm correct, you know? Has anybody ever been in a situation where uh, it's affected how you want to talk about something?
I know at a previous job, one of our teammates was trans. And like we had some people on our team that weren't so accepting of that just because of their religious values. So you had like these two cultural things that were like almost completely at odds with each other. And there were some comments that were made about the one individual, which caused like the the person who was trans to like really back off. Like she stopped sharing, like she would not even like on virtual meetings, she wouldn't even show her face. She would most of the time be on mute. And it really, really changed like how she showed up on the team. And it not only affected her, but it also affected like other members on the team as well because they were closer to her. And so you then found them like now going off camera and being more mutant in conversations that we had in like team meetings. So that's kind of like a dynamic that we've had before that kind of affected the whole team. And you know, we ended up having to do like some bias training and some coaching with that specific individual just to see if we could like change the culture back to like the culture that it was before, where everybody was comfortable like sharing and going over information. So I can definitely see how like that can really affect like a team and kind of take you down because like there were times where we didn't have like she was a power player on our team, and there were times like we moved so much slower on projects because like she wasn't giving like input like she normally did.
I can bring it to this group because I've talked to you guys before about how I was holding back a little bit because of, you know, just experience and even age. But after, I think that's why like the communication aspect is so big, because as soon as I brought it up to you guys, it started getting better. Like the environment's more comfortable. So I think that definitely is a factor.
Nice.
I think that like I mean our team is super diverse in many ways, and I think that's helped us in a way, you know, like um our strengths and our experiences have complemented each other. So like when we talk about things, we can get all the sides of it because we have such different experiences. And like Courtney's young experience is as valid as my old experience. So and you guys are valuable too in the middle.
You know, when I was reading this article, dude, it kind of reminded me of the game that we played with in that workshop with the lead singer of
Okay,
Go,
go.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, Go. Or so what happened in this workshop is we had to fold, I guess, pe the piece of paper into threes, and the top part was like the head, the middle was the body, and the bottom would be the legs. But they gave us no direction in the beginning, right? And they said, here, basically do the head and then turn it so the other person can't see, hand it over, and then draw the body, and then same thing, and draw the legs. And what came out, it was so many like different uh versions of people, and it was just like it was just so good. Like I was like, wow, everybody has different imagination. Some were like aliens, right? It was so weird, dude. And then when they asked us to like combine them, it was a different experience, you know. Um, and it comes back down to different people's cultures, which actually do influence um the the dynamics of the team, right? So
In that same exercise, what was super interesting is we had um well, we have a guy who's like he's like I think he's like 24-ish and he's from South Africa, and then a girl that seemed very young, probably an undergrad, and then there was me. We were working together and we ended up like we had all kinds of wacky things, but then one of ours somehow we did like an earth head with a tree trunk body, and then I forget what the legs were, but it was all nature themed stuff. Like the whole thing somehow came together for no like who knows why we all thought it would be, because we had no indication that it was, but we called him Nature Boy, and Dion kept him. We didn't
that's
cut
so
him up or
funny.
the other
Yeah. One of my favorite ones was you can't even see it. Oh, that sucks. But yeah, I'll share it with you guys in the group message, but so you guys can see it. But yeah, it actually like pointed out, differential cultures, how they do affect, you know what I mean? But not so much the fact that, you had to be aware, like or it would be uncomfortable, like situation, right, where his was impactful. All right, moving on. Let's go to the third one. It's in the pictures.
Oh, right. So the third article was how different forms of social capital created through project team assignments influence employee adoption of sustainability practices. So this study explores how project teams assignments build various types of social capital, um, and how those affect employee uptake of sustainability practices. So first off, the article builds off the idea of social capital, and I had to like look up the definition of social capital, and what I looked up is social capital is the value derived from social networks and relationships, including the trust, norms, and connections that enable individuals and groups to work together and achieve common goals. It fosters cooperation and provides resources, opportunities, and support that contribute to social cohesion and well-being. And so after reading that, like it kind of made sense as well. So it breaks social capital down into three different types. So bonding, which is the tight-knit internal teams connections, bridging, which is connections between teams, departments, and then linking the relationship across hierarchical or power levels. So, you know, senior management, lower management, middle management as well. So the authors argue that project teams aren't just about getting things done. They actually shape the networks of influence within the organization, and that's important, especially for initiatives like sustainability, and often depend on people influencing each other and shift behaviors. Um, the evolution of this argument is that project teams do more than just produce deliverables. Um, they shape the social network inside an organization, which can accelerate or slow down the spread of sustainability practices. Um, he also Arthur builds on prior research showing that sustainability initiatives often fail because employees lack social support or influence channels to adopt new behaviors. This study pushes that forward by showing that team structure isn't created or itself creates those influence channels, meaning sustainability adoption can be designed intentionally, not left to chance. Um, they also build on existing research that shows sustainability program. Oh, sorry, I actually went over that part already. Um, so the study, in terms of methods, they use social network analysis and
Oh,
surveyed 365 employees.
sorry.
Oh,
Apologize.
no
Sorry.
worries.
Okay. There you go. I apologize.
Surveyed 365 employees across 22 project teams in conservation-focused organization. They mapped real relationships between people, so it wasn't just who people thought they were close to, but who they actually connected with during the work. Um, they used SEM, which let them test how the different types of social capital led to behavior changes. It's a strong method for the kind of questions they were asking in the study. The study found that the social capital aspects of like bridging and linking social capital had the strongest effects, which I mean, in my opinion, made sense. So when people had ties across departments or levels of leadership, they were more likely to adopt sustainability behaviors. And like one of the sections in the discussion on the article, um, I talked about how like so um, initiatives like sustainability and other social initiatives like that, like it has to have like a top-down approach, in my opinion, because like senior leadership really has to adopt that and indoctrinate that into the culture of the company. So I could see why those two types of social capital really had the strongest effects. And then it also said bonding capital or having a close-knit team wasn't enough on its own. Um, teams were, in fact, if teams were only bonded and didn't reach out to others, they became siloed. So I can also see that as well. Like if you're practicing this just on your individual project teams and not really incorporating that into other areas of the company, like you're just it's just left in that particular group. So I think that also highlights what it says before, where bridging and linking social capitals make more sense because they're spread across the company. So basically, project teams can be a strategic lever. If leaders place people intentionally on teams, they can spread sustainability practices more effectively through influence and trust networks. Um, couple of or a few of the recommendations that I saw was organizations should design project teams that span departments and hierarchical levels to build bridging and linking social capital since they were the strongest. Um, encourage managerial and peer connectivity across teams to enhance the flow of sustainability practices, and then strengthen internal capacity for network aware project design rather than relying solely on traditional methods or measures of success. So one of the things that I was thinking, like as I was reading this, I was trying to figure out like what are some type of groups that companies could leverage in order to like create this culture where sustainability was like a top focus. And so I immediately thought of like employee resource groups. I had them at my previous job, and they were really great for like bringing awareness to initiatives like this because senior management could like go to those employee resource groups and then kind of like, hey, this is my vision for this. How can this be incorporated into the company? And those groups can like has a higher reach for in the company. So, for example, I was a part of like the African American group as well as like our pride group in that company, and it like it had a span of like everybody in the company, and so it was able to reach more people and really show the important or why these initiatives were important. So I can see that being like a really good example of what companies can do to kind of get the word out, share the knowledge, um, and then they can do things like host learning opportunities or model behaviors that they align with company values. So did anybody else think of any applications that they could think of?
Well,
Building on,
sorry,
you
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Okay. Building on yours, you probably thought of it already, but just having like a master to like a leader. I was thinking master because I was thinking of Scrum, but someone someone who can lead the initiative to share, make sure those communication channels are flowing and that everyone is sharing information, or they could use like online collaborative tools like Slack to um just do the same thing you're talking about, but just on like online.
Okay. Yeah, one of the points that you made, can you elaborate more thinking of what you said about hierarchical, where you think the top-down culture is more needs to be embraced? Like, can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so I think for that, I was thinking more of like if this is going to be a company initiative that we are going to take on, that it has to be something that leaders and senior management are passionate about. Like it not just be like in the vision or the mission statement, it needs to be something that like they're adopting and they are passing it down to the rest of the employees because like efforts like sustainability is going to take everybody in the company. Like everybody plays a part. But I've worked in companies, if they mention something and I don't see them modeling that, then I'm not adopting that or I'm not encouraged to like adopt that because you're not modeling it. So that's when I say like a top-down approach, like it has to be adopted and modeled by senior leadership and passed down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, it's true. Like the culture and the buy-in from upper management totally dictates how the culture is going to be acting, right? Like if
Mhm.
they don't care, why should we? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, that's that kind of
Right.
mentality that insinuates, and then people and the initiatives fall short, right? Because if you're not uh sustainable, right? And I'm not talking about just, in the environmental, but in the social aspect of it, of like equality, like we mentioned earlier, then the organization will crumble within itself, right? So I get it. Um,
Well, another application of this is like, why stop at sustainability? So like it sort of reminds me of those things like I don't know if you remember heard of the like 100 monkey theory, which is like about these monkeys that learned how to wash their food and it went to all the islands, even though the monkeys didn't go to the other islands. And it's kind of like the same idea, like I liked the idea that they were using in a way like peer pressure, like if you know people that do these things, you're more likely to adopt the same things. And so you could kind of see it like you could use it to teach all different kinds of things or values within the company, like your friends are doing it, so you should.
Influence.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, especially with sustainability, like, what I've noticed is people, like I said, people have a one type of mentality when it comes to sustainability, which is only on the environmental, right? Everybody thinks of sustainability as, oh, I need to save the earth and the planet, and it has so much more dimension than that, right?
About
It has
resources.
right, it says the social governance part and aspect of it, because we never think of the human aspect of social
Sustainability.
sustainability. Yeah. So it's got a bigger layer.
Well, like they do talk about project sustainability, and they mean it more like, can the project last through its resources and continue in the future and without depleting its stuff.
It's resources, yeah.
Yeah. Or stuff. Stuff is a good word.
Stuff. I like that. Cool. Yeah. One of the things we didn't talk about, and I kind of want to bring it up, was cultural intelligence, right? Having the branching out, right, to what we call uh the other layers, which is cognitive, what is it? Motivational and behavioral. And that's one of the things we didn't talk about in one of the, and all three articles touched on this,
Yeah.
right?
I agree with
So,
that. I was actually just thinking about that as well, because like those three like domains can be applied to any of these. Like, um, the more knowledge that we have, the more motivation that we have, the more like we change our behavior. So I felt like like I commented that like they build on each other, and I didn't know if y'all caught that too, or if that even makes sense.
Yeah. Well, they all
yeah,
just use different terms for those things. So like, like the first article, instead of saying cognitive, it said intelligence, and then motivation they did say, and then what was the other one?
behavioral.
Behavior.
Behavior. Yeah. So they did talk about behavior too. And I think that all the articles brought up things, but they just called them different things. I like that overreaching concept that you can see in it, even though they call it different things,
Yeah. On the
like
last
stuff.
article, it focused a lot on the behavioral, right? Because if you have good
Yeah.
behavior, like and incorporate new habits and new ways of learning, right? And make it as a rep was it like a repertoire, right? It becomes the norm, like understanding rituals. Hey, you know what? Today is uh bring glasses in for coffee or whatever versus bringing Starbucks coffee, right? Or whatever, and you create that little culture of sustainability. Or hey, let's this weekend we're gonna have talk about Women's Month or something, you know what I mean? And you bring that into the culture and it becomes part of what are we gonna do next month? Oh, next month is
Yeah.
Hispanic month or whatever. Oh, and and that's how you start embedding the people culture into the organization. I do agree to a certain point that it is from the higher ups to push down, but it also comes back down from the people putting in doing their part, right? Of actually like saying, hey, you know what, let's embrace some of it. Because a lot of the times, I've seen HR, they host a lot of events that are inclusive and like nobody wants to participate in it. You know what I mean? Has that happened in your guys' organization where, they've had some initiatives in it and just nobody wants to like join?
Well, I know, like, I'm thinking of like they have this goodwill drive at the university every year, and I like on principle refuse to partake in it because like they get the highest members. Like I'll give
Let's
my money
let's
separately, but I'm not doing it for the university. They get that like deans and the president, they all like write these emails like everybody should give to this thing and blah blah blah. And meanwhile, those are the people like making like $500,000, and I'm sitting there like barely able to pay rent in the city I live in, and it's irritating. So sometimes having the upper level do something is also off-putting. So that's why it's good to look at spreading it among the low people too. Like
yeah.
But is it still working, although you're not like contributing through like company and you're doing it like individually by yourself? Is it still like,
no.
is it no?
But I mean, I
Okay.
might be a special case about this because I get kind of like irritated by that kind of thing.
I can understand that. Um, yeah, I think like that kind of ties into motivation of people. And so in previous companies that we've had where like leadership does send something down, like I loved how HR maybe sent something out company wide, like some information out company wide to get like people interested. And also just to get that knowledge out there, because that's why I said it kind of builds. And then that kind of stimulates people's motivation and like wanting to maybe know more about what that particular issue is. And I understand like you're not going to get everybody. Like there's just going to be some people who like they just don't care.
They're
Um,
grumpy and
right. But at least they're trying to get it, get that knowledge out there and like let people know like this is why we're doing this.
Yeah, it pushes a little bit of the people to start thinking intrinsically, right? Like, oh, this actually is something that I do want to, or vice versa. Like Kristen says, something I don't want to get involved with. So,
Right.
but regardless, I mean, it's still pushing towards an objective, right? So, I'm pretty sure, let's say 5 to 10 years, I mean, Kristen's gonna end up having to like shell out some money. You know what I mean? 'Cause if she's the only one out of the 100, it's gonna peer pressure her into saying, "Oh well, you know what? Everybody else is doing it, so might as
I
well."
don't do peer pressure, so it's okay. I'm unaffected. You can dislike me all you want.
All right. Well, I mean that's it. I will be updating it with all the recommendations and possible applications. I kind of did like a real quick note taking, just but I will write it correctly, and then if anybody wants to add anything, I will be submitting it on Saturday morning.
Okay.
Cool. I'm gonna stop the recording. Let's see. Stop the share. I think there's a recording.